Hello, my name is Michael Kotch. I'm a Christian Bible teacher, author, and counselor from the United States. Welcome back to my weekly Bible teaching series. In this Bible teaching series, I'm going to cover the major events that take place in the Bible, starting in the beginning with the book of Genesis and moving all the way through to the end of the book of Revelation. What we're going to cover today is the story of Joseph in the Old Testament. And the way people went as far as series of people, it went Abraham, and he had two sons. He had Ishmael and Isaac was the son that God made the heir through and the promise through. And then Isaac had two sons, Jacob and Esau. Jacob was the one that God made the heir through and the promise through. And then Jacob, God changed Jacob's name to Israel. He was the first person in the country, Israel. And he had 12 sons. And his 12 sons would go on to form the 12 tribes of Israel. And we're going to learn about one of his 12 sons, Joseph. We're going to actually learn a little bit about all of his sons, but this is focused on his one son named Joseph. I personally find this one of the most interesting stories in the Bible, one of the most entertaining stories in the Bible. You could definitely make a movie out of this story. It's a lot of adventure in it. It's almost like a fairy tale, the way things turn out, from rags to riches. But it's a Bible story and it's a true story. So let's get into it. Jacob had 12 sons. Again, God changed Jacob's name to Israel, and he promised him he would form a great nation from his offspring, and it started with his 12 sons, which would become the 12 tribes of Israel. The sons' names are Reuben, Simon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. Now Joseph was the second youngest son of Jacob. Jacob loved Joseph the most out of all of his sons because he was the first son of his wife Rachel, the wife he loved more than his other wife Leah. Now if you remember, Jacob had two wives. Jacob was a trickster. That's what Jacob's name means, is trickster. He would manipulate and trick people. Well, he ran into his uncle Laban, who was more trickier than he was. And Jacob wound up falling in love with his cousin named Rachel. And he asked his uncle Laban if he could marry her. And Laban said, yeah, you can marry her, but you have to work for me for 7 years first. And if you work for me for 7 years, then I will give you my daughter Rachel in marriage. So Jacob said, okay, I will. So he worked for him for 7 years. And on the wedding day, Laban doesn't bring out Rachel. He brings out the older sister Leah. Jacob said, what are you doing? He said, well, you're going to marry my daughter Leah. He said, no, you know I love Rachel. We had an agreement that if I work for you for 7 years, I'm going to marry Rachel. Laban said, technicality, in my culture, or in my beliefs or my family rules, the oldest daughter has to get married first, which is Leah. Now you can marry Rachel, but you have to marry Leah first. And if you still want to marry Rachel, you can have her, but you got to work for me another 7 years, basically for free, to get Leah, or to get Rachel. So he did, because he loved her. So he worked for his uncle Laban for 14 years. He worked for him for 7 years, and he gave him his daughter Leah to be his wife. And then he worked another 7 years, and he got the woman he really wanted, which was Rachel, to be his wife. Now, Jacob loved Rachel more than Leah. First of all, having two wives that are sisters, could that be problems? Yeah, absolutely. If you love one more than the other, could that be problems? Yeah, absolutely. And what happened was he had 10 sons, first with Leah, and Rachel was barren. So Leah would tease Rachel, Jacob gave me 10 sons, and you don't have any. And Rachel would tease Leah back, Jacob loves me more than you. So there's all this friction and tension. But he had 12 sons through the two of them. And the first 10 he had through Leah. And then the second 2 he had through Rachel. And the first one of those 2 with Rachel, the one he loved more, was Joseph. Then he had another one, Benjamin. And you'll see that, this runs in the family. He himself, his mom loved Jacob more than she loved his other son Esau. His dad Isaac loved Esau more than Jacob. And you're going to see Jacob loved Joseph more than the other. There's all this, I love certain kids more than others, and it causes major problems. Don't do that. Love all your kids the same. You don't want to love one more than the other because it causes problems. So anyways, Jacob loved Joseph the most out of all of his sons because he was the first son of the wife Rachel, the wife that he loved more than his other wife Leah. The fact that Jacob loved Joseph more than his other brothers bothered his other brothers greatly. They were jealous of this. Jacob made Joseph a robe of many colors, which Joseph wore. He didn't make this for his other sons, just as one. He's saying, look, he's special to me. When his brothers saw this, they became envious of Joseph and they hated him. That can be found in Genesis chapter 37, verses 1 to 4. Now, when Joseph was 17 years old, he had two dreams. He told his brothers the first dream. Joseph said, hey, brothers, I had this dream. Let me tell you what it was. And Joseph said, behold, we were out binding sheaves of wheat in the field. And my sheaf arose and stood upright. And behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf. And his brothers said, are you indeed to reign and rule over us? And he had a second dream. And he said, behold, the sun, the moon, the 11 stars are all bowing down to me. Now the brothers already hated him because his father loved him more than them. And now he's having dreams that the whole universe is bowing down to him. And the work that his brothers are doing bowing down to him. So it made them dislike him even more. That can be found in Genesis chapter 37, verses 6 to 9. Now both Joseph's father and his brothers criticized Joseph for these dreams that he had. Now one day, Joseph's older brothers were watching a flock of sheep in a field far away. Joseph's father, Jacob, sent Joseph to them to see if they needed his help. His brothers saw Joseph coming from a distance. They were envious of Joseph and they plotted to kill him. So his own brothers were planning, here he comes, let's kill him. His oldest brother, Reuben, said it would be very wrong to kill their brother Joseph. He said they should put him in a pit until they figured out what to do with him. So we won't kill him, we'll just throw him in a pit until we figure out what we are going to do with him. So they grabbed him, they took off his robe of many colors, and they put him in a pit. Now, while Reuben was away working, a bunch of slave traders, Ishmaelite slave traders, passed by. Again, Ishmaelite was the first son of Abraham, and he banished him because his wife was jealous because she had her own son, and so he went off and formed this other tribe called Ishmaelites. So slave traders from basically their extended relatives of these brothers, slave traders came by, and the brothers decided to sell Joseph to the slave traders for 20 pieces of silver, which they did. So they took Joseph and they sold him for 20 pieces of silver as a slave to these slave traders. They figured they're never going to see him again. They took Joseph's robe, the robe of many colors, they ripped it up and they put animal blood on it. They went home and they told their father Jacob that a fierce wild animal killed Joseph. Now remember, Jacob loved Joseph more than all the other sons. So, you know, to hear your other sons coming home and say your favorite son was murdered by an animal and he was tore up and drug away, we can't even find him, it crushed him. He was devastated for years upon hearing this, thinking his son was dead. That can be found in Genesis chapter 37, verses 12 to 36. So Joseph was taken to the country of Egypt as a slave. He was bought by a man named Potiphar. Potiphar was a captain of the Pharaoh's guard. He had an important position in Pharaoh's military, I guess. God was with Joseph and he blessed everything that Joseph did. As a result, Joseph was successful at all the tasks that he did in the service of Potiphar. Potiphar noticed that Joseph was successful at everything that he did. And he made Joseph overseer of his house and put him in charge of all that he had. That can be found in Genesis chapter 39, verses 1 to 6. Now Joseph was a very handsome man, and Potiphar's wife was attracted to him. Day after day, she would ask Joseph to sleep with her, but Joseph wouldn't do it, because Joseph was a good man, he knew it was wrong. He told her, behold, because of me, my master has no concern about anything in the house. He has put everything that he has in my charge. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except yourself, because you are his wife. How can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? So Joseph saw if he slept with his master's wife as a great sin, and he wouldn't do it. That can be found in Genesis chapter 39, verses 8 to 9. Now, but Potiphar's wife persisted, and she kept pursuing Joseph, trying to get him to sleep with her, but he wouldn't do it. Well, one day, Joseph was in a house, and he happened to be in a house, and he was alone, and she was in the house too. And she grabbed him and yelled, "Sleep with me." Well, he refused because he said it was wrong, it was a sin. She wouldn't let him go. She's holding on to him. So he pulled away and ripped his shirt off. Now, ripped his shirt off, so his shirt now is in her hands. She got angry because Joseph rejected her. Imagine a scorned woman becoming angry. She had his shirt in her hand, and she lied to the guards, saying that Joseph tried to force himself on her. And she ripped his shirt off as she tried to get away from him as he was attacking her. She said, "I'll get you. You know, you're going to reject me. You'll see what happens to you." So she lied to the guards and said, he tried to attack me. Now, she also told her husband Potiphar this lie when he got home from work. Potiphar had Joseph arrested and put in prison. However, just like when Joseph was in Potiphar's house and God was with him and he blessed everything he did, made it successful, when Joseph was in prison, God was with him. And he blessed everything Joseph did, and everything Joseph did in prison was successful. As a result, Joseph was put in charge of all of the prisoners in the prison. That can be found in Genesis chapter 39, verse 11 to 23. Now, while Joseph was in prison, the Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker were accused of stealing from the Pharaoh, and they were put in prison with Joseph. Both of them had dreams while they were sleeping, and they were troubled by them because they did not know what their dreams meant. They told their dreams to Joseph, and God told Joseph the meaning of their dreams. God told Joseph that the cupbearer's dream meant that in 3 days he would be declared innocent of his crime and he would be released from prison. The baker's dream meant that in 3 days he would be found guilty of his crime and he would be put to death for it. And that's exactly what happened. The cupbearer was very happy that he was released from prison, of course. And Joseph asked him, I told you what your dream meant. I told you you're going to be released from prison. Listen, can you do me a favor? Can you please talk to Pharaoh and tell him that, I'm an innocent man. I don't belong here, and see if he can get me out of prison. And the cupbearer said, "Oh, sure, of course. Yeah, of course I'll do that for you." Well, once Pharaoh's cupbearer was released from prison, he forgot all about Joseph, and he didn't do what he said he would do. And Joseph was stuck in prison for 2 more years. That can be found in Genesis chapter 40, verses 1 and 23. Now, 2 years later, Pharaoh had 2 troublesome dreams. In the first dream, he dreamed that 7 healthy cows, 7 plump and healthy cows, walked out of the Nile River. Now, shortly after that, 7 skinny and sickly and deathly looking cows walked out of the Nile River behind them and ate the 7 healthy cows. In the second dream, Pharaoh dreamed that there was 7 big and plump and healthy ears of corn that grew up from the ground. And then right after that, 7 diseased and dried up and sick and withered ears of corn grew up, and they ate the healthy ears of corn. Now, when the Pharaoh woke up, he was really scared and he was really upset about his dreams. So he asked all the wise men of Egypt if they could interpret his dreams. He told them what they were, and he asked them, "Please, can you tell me what they meant?" But nobody could. And that can be found in Genesis chapter 41, verses 1 to 8. Now the cupbearer remembered, "Hey, Pharaoh, when I was in prison, when I was accused of doing something wrong and I was found innocent 2 years ago, there was this guy in there named Joseph, I think, and I had dreams, and the baker had dreams, and he told us exactly what the dreams meant, and that's what happened. He might be able to interpret your dreams for you." So the Pharaoh said, "Go get him." Now, Joseph was still stuck in prison, but the Pharaoh needed him, and now they knew exactly where he was. After they were looking for him, they found him in prison. So they got him out of prison, and they asked Joseph if he could interpret the dreams, and Joseph said, "Well, I can't, but my God can. Let me ask my God if he can interpret the dreams for you." So Pharaoh told Joseph the dreams, and Joseph told him to God, and okay, God told him back what they meant. And Joseph said, "Pharaoh, my God told me what your dreams meant." Joseph told Pharaoh that the dream about the healthy and the sickly cows and the healthy and the sickly corn, both dreams meant the same thing. there would be 7 years of great crops, followed by 7 years of famine, which no crops would grow, and there's not going to be any food in the future. He told Pharaoh, listen, this is what you need to do. During the 7 years of the good crops, you need to store 1/5 of everything that grows every year and put it in a storehouse. And then when the 7 years of famine comes, you're going to have this food saved up, and this is going to allow you to survive the famine. Now, the Pharaoh was extremely pleased that God told Joseph what the Pharaoh's dreams meant. And the Pharaoh said that because God was clearly with Joseph in everything that he did, Pharaoh made Joseph second in command over all of Egypt behind him. And everyone in Egypt had to do whatever Joseph said. He said, not only are you, God showed you your dreams, but what my dreams meant, but he told you what to do. And I'm putting you in charge of running this thing. Joseph, you said there's going to be 7 years of good crops, and we need to store up 1/5 every year and put it away for a famine's coming. You're in charge of this. You set everything up, and you're second behind me. I'm the only one ahead of you. You're above everybody else in Egypt. That can be found in Genesis chapter 41, verse 37 to 45. Now Joseph was 30 years old, and he was placed second in command over Egypt. Now the Pharaoh's dreams came true just as God told Joseph they would. There were 7 years of plenty, during which the Egyptians saved up 1/5 their crops each year in storehouses, and Joseph oversaw this. After this came 7 years of famine, in which no crops would grow. Joseph then, during the famine, opened up the storehouse, and he sold the saved food to the people during the famine that he saved up when there was plenty. Now he sold this food not only to the Egyptians, but also he sold it to neighboring countries that were hit by this famine. Egypt wasn't the only country in the area hit by this famine. It hit all of the countries around Egypt, where no food would grow, no crops would grow, or not enough anyways. Now, this famine also came to Joseph's father, Jacob, whose name now is Israel, and his 11 brothers living in Canaan, who sold him to the slave trader several years ago. Well, actually it wasn't 11, it was 10. His younger brother had nothing to do with it. But so his father, Jacob, or Israel, and his 10 older brothers sold him as a slave, and his other younger brother had nothing to do with it. Were back home, thinking Canaan, and they got hit with the famine. So Jacob, or Israel, instructed his 10 sons. He said, what are you doing? We're starving here. There's food in Egypt. Go to Egypt, take our money. Our money's no good for us here. We're going to starve to death. Go buy us some food. And so he's angry, and he sent them out to go buy food in Egypt. But Jacob, he sent the 10 sons, but he kept his youngest son, Benjamin, home with him. Now, Benjamin was Joseph's full brother, okay? The older 10 were half-brothers. Remember, their father Jacob had 2 wives. Leah, he had 10 sons with Leah, and then he had 2 sons with Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin. So Benjamin was his full brother, same mother and father, but the other brothers, they had the same father, Jacob, but a different mother. Jacob sent the 10 brothers to Egypt to buy grain, but he kept his other son home with him. Again, is he playing favorites? Maybe. He did it already. And don't forget, Benjamin was the other son of the wife he loved more, so that he sent you 10. Well, you guys are expendable. I don't know. I'll send you, but the one I love and I want to keep him safe. Who knows? Now, when the 10 brothers got there to Egypt, they had to go to Joseph, because Joseph was in charge of distributing the food. Joseph, their brother, that they sold into slavery and sold him for dead. Now Joseph recognized his brothers, but they didn't recognize him because he was all dressed now. First of all, he's older. He was, I think, 17. He was 17 when they sold him. He was 30 when he became second in command of Egypt. There were 7 years of good crops, so that made him 37. This is the bad crops. He was approaching 40 now. So they sold him when he was 17. He was approaching 40, and he was dressed like an Egyptian, probably like a pharaoh kind of thing. He's second in command. So they didn't recognize him at all, but he knew them. You think he's going to forget them, his brothers that sold him to slavery? So Joseph recognized his brothers, and he had his guards take them and put them in prison and accused them of being spies. He wanted to scare them. Now, They did not recognize Joseph, and they were very afraid. They believed that they were finally being punished for selling Joseph into slavery several years ago because they were very envious of him. They were sorry for doing this, and they said they deserved whatever punishment they got now for doing this to Joseph. Now, after Joseph frightened them for a few days that he was going to keep them prisoners, saying, I think you're spies and I'm keeping you in prison for a long time, he finally sent all the guards out. He was in the room alone with them. And he said to them, take a good look at my face, brothers. I'm your brother Joseph, whom you sold into slavery. I am now second in command over all of Egypt. That's in Genesis chapter 43, the whole story, 1 and 34, and also 44, verses 1 and 34. They were petrified, the brothers. Oh my goodness. Our brother we sold into slavery, we sold him off to his death. He's now second in charge of Egypt, and we're under his power. He's going to kill us. They were petrified. But Joseph, there's a lot of things in Joseph that foreshadow events that would happen in Jesus' life later on. One was he's the favorite son of the Father. Jesus was the favorite son of the Father. He was punished for doing something when he never committed any crime. There was never any record of Joseph sinning. Now, I'm sure he sinned because the Bible says no one is not sinned except for Jesus, but it doesn't talk about it. He rose to the second highest in command. Jesus rose and became seated at the right hand of the Father. And what we're going to see next was Jesus forgave those who sinned against him. Don't forget, when he was crucified, he was saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Joseph had the opportunity to do anything he wanted to his brothers, okay? Because of what they did to him. But he said to his brothers, don't worry, brothers. God allowed everything to happen the way that it did so that I can save people's lives. Although you sold me to the slave traders and meant it for bad, God meant it for good. He made everything I did to be successful, and eventually put me second in charge of Egypt, where I saved up food to survive the famine. I love you, brothers, and do not be afraid of me. And Joseph realized it. I'm sure God was helping him, but Joseph realized that everything that happened for a reason, and it eventually led him to being second in charge of Egypt, with God giving him a plan to save everybody from the famine. And although there were extreme hardships, he learned from things. First of all, he sold into slavery. He was sold to Potiphar. Potiphar had this huge mansion. He was a rich man. Joseph learned how to manage a rich estate. Then he went to prison. He ran a prison. Joseph had to learn to run a tough environment in the worst circumstances. Joseph is now second in charge of Egypt. He has to run a whole country. He had training and running something when things are good. He had training and running things when things were tough and bad. And he realized that God, it wasn't you, brothers, that did this to me. God allowed this to happen to me so I could eventually be in this place to save everybody. And I forgive you and I love you. Well, they were relieved. Okay? The brothers are overjoyed that Joseph was alive and doing well. Joseph sent for his father Jacob, and Jacob was overwhelmed with joy. Then, oh my goodness, Joseph's alive. My favorite son, I thought you were dead. You're alive. Not only you're alive, you're second in charge of Egypt, and you save everybody. Now Jacob, whose name is Israel now, and his 11 other sons moved to Egypt, and they lived with Joseph there in Egypt for the rest of their lives. That's found in Genesis chapter 41, verses 1 to 28, and Genesis chapter 46, verses 1 to 26. Now we're going to see what happens with these 12 sons, their offspring over time. They become the 12 tribes of Israel. They had Jacob and his 12 sons. Joseph was one of them. 12 sons had kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, great-great-grandkids, whatever. And over time, now they're living in Egypt. Remember, they moved from wherever they're at, they moved to Egypt because Egypt had food, and because Joseph was there, he let them stay. Well, they stayed there throughout time. They didn't go back. So these descendants of Jacob or Israel exponentially reproduced over time, and you're going to see what happens. And what we're going to learn about next time is Moses. He's the next big story. We're going to see how these 12 sons, their offspring, led to these Israelites growing in Egypt, and then Pharaoh deciding, you know, what are these people doing here? They're not really Egyptians. I'm going to turn them into slaves. They were slaves for 430 years until God sent Moses to free them. So we're going to learn about that next. I hope you like these. I put these on Facebook for anybody to use. So, you know, feel free to take them, steal them, pirate them. I don't care what you do with them. If you could use these videos to teach about the Bible in your church, in your Sunday school, in your mission, in your Bible college, in your orphanage, whatever, please feel free to use them. Anything on my Facebook Bible page. Feel free to take and use. My goal is to spread the teaching of the Word of God to as many people for free as possible. That's why I do this. So please, I hope you can use this. I hope it's useful for you. And God bless you. And we'll pick back up on Moses next week. Take care.